Yeah, hi. Today we're actually in a different spot. Up until now, we've always had these chats at our equestrian facility over here. Today we're at a place that's really amazing too. It's in Aubenhausen with Benjamin Werndl, and we're absolutely thrilled to be here. Now we've got this fantastic opportunity to chat about a few topics, share some thoughts, and just have a relaxed, fun, and meaningful conversation together in this cool spot. That concerns both of us. That's about the sport. We've got a bit of sound around us because great weather, but we wanted to stay outside. The farmers aren't having it as easy and aren't sitting as comfortably as we are. They're out there mowing. So we don't need to raise our voices, but we'll manage. Benny, it's awesome that I get to be here, that we get to be here, and yeah, just brilliant.
Yeah, a warm welcome. We've been working together for almost a year now, and we've made some really amazing progress with a whole range of different horses. And the topic of the saddle is, of course, absolutely crucial, the connection between rider and horse. You've already been a huge help with that, and I'm really thankful for it. So I'm genuinely looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, awesome. I'm genuinely thrilled to hear that it's really helping you move forward as well. It's such a joy because honestly, this is exactly why you put in all the effort. Being able to work with the horses and continuously improve things, which is just so incredibly rewarding and fulfilling. For this chat, I thought about you, your family, and the Aubenhausen team. And it's huge, right? You've built something truly remarkable and inspiring, a real legacy in the equestrian world. You guys are everywhere, practically omnipresent. It's really noticeable, but honestly, I haven't heard much about how you actually got started in all of this at the very beginning. I mean, for us guys, getting into riding is kind of a unique experience, you know? How did it go for you? I mean, it's not directly about saddles, but I'm honestly just genuinely curious now.
Yeah, well, it started with Jesse and with our mom. They were totally horse crazy, and I was like 5, 6 years old, and then I just started tagging along with them. And what really caught my attention was the stable life, you know, the whole atmosphere and vibe around it. And I also made some really great friends there, but honestly, riding itself wasn't really my main focus back then. But then I met the horse. Somehow I just built this really strong connection with it. They say the horse bug gets you, and in my case, it really did. I'm still totally hooked on it to this day, and you never get rid of it again. But it wasn't like it was something I chose. It just sort of evolved naturally over time and years. And we were super into sports, our whole family. Like, I tried out pretty much everything you can think of. Played tennis, went skiing, and when we do something, we always go all in, no half measures at all, ever. All in, you know, really going big time. We were also in the ski team, the national squad. Mom was also competing in the European Cup, so she was a really, really successful skier. Dad was a sailor, and he was actually a multiple-time German champion in sailing as well, you know. But at some point, around 12 or 13, you reach that stage where you just can't keep doing absolutely everything anymore. Then we decided to focus on riding, and that's when we finally made the move to Aubenhausen. We were actually in Rosenheim first. We weren't a typical horse family at all, but we got into it through our aunt, who had a pretty large Levitzer breeding farm up and running back then. And we just really fell in love with the horses, and then one thing led to another. So it wasn't something we had planned out for a long time. We also studied, you know, we did other things, Jesse and I, but then with the partners we had in the horses, it just clicked. It simply took the chance to turn his hobby into a full-time career. And that's not just a job anymore, but maybe even a true calling that defines him. So, combining that, it fascinates us, and I still don't feel like I'm going to work, but I love it. Still heading out to the barn every single day, working on improving myself and growing alongside the horses, always striving to be better. Improving the horses, improving us together, and in that sense, every single gear is, of course, extremely important. And now I'm having a chat with you, the saddle expert, which is also super, super important. Because if even one gear isn't functioning correctly, the entire system ends up grinding to a halt. And good just doesn't cut it. So we're really pushing hard to make sure everything is absolutely perfect and runs flawlessly without any hiccups at all. And then it's like an orchestra. Everything just comes together seamlessly and flows perfectly in the end.
You're describing it really nicely. I haven't had anywhere near the same riding success, but the horse bug definitely got me too. It came from the family though, and you never really let go of it. I actually tried really stubbornly to do something else. I'm actually a banker by profession, and I genuinely made an effort to explore different career paths and industries. But I ended up back here anyway, and I'm genuinely happy every single day, and I totally agree with what you're saying. It doesn't feel like work at all, honestly. And that, of course, brings so much joy. I'm honestly a bit relieved your aunt didn't get her way with the dressage riders. It's a bit trickier with the saddles, because the small ponies are a completely different kind of challenge altogether. No, but seriously, Dot, it's actually a story you hear quite often from men who ride, how they somehow got into it, family or... But someone once said something pretty interesting, like the number point of beginners who actually start riding. This was a few years back. The numbers are probably a bit different now. It's like, Dot, 97 girls, 3 boys, and in the end, 1 boy and 1 girl stay in the sport. Well, I think it was kind of just a saying, but it's true. The guys, when they start and manage to push past that initial hurdle, then as they grow older and stay fully committed to riding, that's often how it goes. Yeah, it's definitely interesting to know that for sure. I would have thought there's an even bigger horse background in your family overall, honestly speaking. A sports background totally makes sense. Maybe that's also the way you guys manage to think outside the box so naturally and effectively, you know? Still here, just like it's always been.
So we still take a lot of inspiration from other sports and try to learn from them. It's not like I think I know everything, especially when it comes to saddles. I've learned a lot from you, and I'm really focused on improving in all areas. So we're like sponges, soaking up everything we can. But when it comes to men, back in the day, it was definitely way more male-dominated than it is today. Well, it all comes from, you know, equestrian sports having their origins in the military, and that was definitely male-dominated. And now, of course, there are way more women involved. And that's actually really special, you know, that we're all competing against each other on equal terms. No other sport is like that. It's truly unique.
Yeah, Dot. Formula One's thinking about women, but equestrian's unique. Yeah.
Yeah. If we're comparing, women naturally have an edge with their elegance, a quality they inherently bring to the sport from the very beginning, giving them a bit of an upper hand. Guys might have the edge with a bit more natural influence, maybe even a bit more leverage in certain situations, you know? But the risk is always there, right? That you might overdo it and end up pushing that leverage way too far. If something doesn't feel easy, then it's likely not the right way to go. Women usually have a sense for these things, are often supposed to figure it out, right? How do I make this work now? I don't even have the option. And they have to decide on a path that's smooth and works for them. And we guys absolutely have to do the same thing over and over again, because honestly, that's the only way to make it work and truly get it right. Everything that feels easy is right. What's hard, in the long run, just isn't the way to go. It brings no joy and won't ever make the horse truly shine in the end. Trust me on that.
Yeah, true. What's interesting, like you said, is I've been studying development, taking notes on men and women. Men and women are physically very different, and not just in terms of the obvious difference, but fundamentally different. So that's actually quite a topic. It's practically its own podcast. Men don't have an elastic pelvic floor. Men have 3 to 6 centimeters less space between their sitting bones. Men have a tailbone that really functions effectively. We sit on our sitting bones and the tailbone, you know. We sort out front, left, or right, then we sit. We have a greater opening in the thigh angle and naturally have the calf engaged, are more built for the upper part rather than the lower. And a woman sits with this 3 to 6 centimeters wider distance, shorter sit bones, more elastic pelvic floor. The older, the more elastic due to hormonal influence. Us men, by the way, the older we get, the stiffer we become, unfortunately. And we can't use our tailbone to brace ourselves. That's why they sit on the sits bones, and pubic bone. Most people aren't aware of it, and honestly, I wasn't either.
Until now either. I think
That's actually pretty fascinating. Are you fully aware that women typically ride with a completely different physicality compared to men? It looks different, sure, but it's really quite fascinating to consider. That's why we created these unisex jumps. But the outcome is, it's completely fascinating to realize that 2 totally different bodies, in the end, have to do something different as well. When you're teaching or whatever, do you actually see it, notice it?
Yeah, I definitely notice it, but I've never heard it phrased that way. That's why I find it so interesting. In the end, it's all about balance, whether it's a man or a woman. That doesn't matter at all. How does that sense of lightness actually come about in riding through balance? Horses themselves have completely different exteriors, and I can still find balance with a wide range of them, no matter their build, shape, size, type, or structure. The head is absolutely crucial, of course. But can a horse still move in balance easily, even if it's not perfectly ideal in its build? And it's the same with people. The feeling plays a massive role. Do I have my own sense of body awareness and control? And if I can demonstrate this, perhaps using the chair as an example, if I take a chair, getting it to balance is already an effort. So I have to adjust and work here in all directions until I finally manage to get the chair as close to being perfectly balanced as possible. It's definitely not as easy as it might seem at first. And then I don't have to do much anymore. I'm basically just the tipping point of the scale. Now I'm losing it again. Balance isn't permanent. It's really fascinating to see. So whether it's a man or a woman, that's not really the deciding factor here. What matters more is that I've managed to find some balance. And then I don't do much as a rider anymore. It's just mental gymnastics at that point. And that's mainly what I focus on when I teach, because that was your question.
Yeah, but I think those were the essential prerequisites, the physical ones, to guide someone in that specific direction. The technical aspect, it's obviously a massive factor as well. I mean, our center of gravity as men is here in the shoulders. Women have theirs in the hips. That's already the fundamental reason, particularly when it comes to balance. And still, I firmly believe what you're saying doesn't conflict with how I see it from my purely physical and technical perspective at all. Because at the end of the day, and this actually brings me around to another point that fits perfectly right here, there's the balance as a result, the lesson afterward, and what actually comes out of it in the very end. And then there's the feeling of achieving that balance, and also the feeling when you describe it that way, I'd almost think you're more focused on chasing that feeling than being overly concerned about the actual end result. Or is it already like that? I mean, when you want to teach, you've got to have an idea of where you're headed. How do you analyze that?
So the feeling is absolutely crucial. What does balance actually feel like for you? So what is balance really? Put simply, it means I don't have to push to keep my horse moving forward, and I don't have to hold it back to keep it with me. But I also don't want to stretch everything out, just sitting there like I'm carefully balancing on a raw egg. I really want to connect properly when the horse genuinely moves forward, so it carries from behind and I can release up front. Because you can also approach the gallop, for example, in a light seat, full speed, then you're also in balance. It's also balanced, and it's nice and it's important, and that's what we do. But what we're discussing here is balance in the collection, and that's really where everything originates from. From that comes suppleness. So it's not like I first loosen up the horse and then ride it into balance. No, it's actually the other way around. I focus on balancing the horse first, and that's what naturally leads to suppleness. And from that, the lightness naturally comes. It's not about pretending it's easy. It's about making sure it feels genuinely effortless and smooth, like it should. And that sense of authenticity is truly what you end up feeling. Now we're circling back to that idea of feeling again. You can't fake it, so the horse feels it. And that's exactly why our sport continues to feel so modern, because we're constantly losing that genuine connection in life due to all the superficiality surrounding us. Everything is so fast-paced, superficial, gone in an instant. And with a horse, you really don't have any other option but to be authentic.
The time that reflects it. But what's really interesting about your chair example is actually a story. That ended up being quite a nice and meaningful one. And that's kind of where my question was headed with result and feeling. This sometimes slightly heated discussion about how a horse should move and what it's allowed to do and whether it's allowed to get behind the vertical or something like that. I mean, especially your reference now, you're saying from skiing and other areas, there's no sport where the athlete, so what they're supposed to actually perform and demonstrate in the competition in the end is so closely tied to their partner. Does that in the warm-up phase. I mean, no athlete, when they're stretching, loosening up or warming up, does it in the exact same position or posture they'll perform in later. It's just not how it works. You know what I mean? There's this pretty hysterical discussion going on that the horses should look like they're in the Grand Prix test those 7 minutes all the time. But actually, during the entire warm-up phase, they should be in this completely... Yeah, they're supposed to be in that final competition posture the whole time. And nowadays there's less and less allowance for the horses to stretch out a bit, to really stretch and loosen up and properly limber up and relax. I find it an interesting approach here, or maybe even a good approach to say, I'm really aiming to find that perfect balance.
Exactly. It always depends on who's saying it. So if I, as a soldier, stand around all day somewhere without moving, of course, I'm going to get stiff. Well, I definitely want to move and all that. Of course, it's the same with a horse. It's not a statue. It's all about dynamic movement, and I aim to gymnasticize it in every possible direction, really. So the question, whether I ride my horse up or down, well, it's always a case-by-case thing. Really depends on the situation and what's needed. So I want to bring it into balance. If a horse tends to push upward, then I try to ride it more into the depth. If a horse tucks down and starts to lose itself, then I guide it more upward instead. I'm constantly working to find that perfect balance, and even when I do, there's a good chance I might lose it again shortly after, and that's completely normal, you know? It's also really crucial to just relax into it, because we're not dealing with a statue here, but a living, breathing creature that's constantly moving and reacting to us.
Strengths and flaws, which you kind of have to work on to get a bit more stronger, you know?
When it comes to discussing horse welfare, I'm always ready to dive right into that conversation, no doubt about it. Because the way we treat horses, we absolutely need to have that discussion, but honestly, I'd take it one step further. How do we actually treat animals worldwide? Honestly, a lot of things aren't going well at all right now, really. It's pretty concerning. And now we've got a really big chance to take this discussion and say, hey, let's actually sit down and have a proper chat about it all together, you know? How do we actually treat animals? But the way we handle the horses here in Aubenhausen and then share that with the world, the horses truly love it, giving them that genuine recognition, spending time with them, engaging with them, showing them love. Well, we can't really let them roam freely around anymore. They could get hit by a train, but we make sure they have the best life possible. They get out a lot, and there's a certain logic and reasoning behind the way we handle things. So that means should horses even be allowed to sweat at all? Yeah. Well, I think it's healthy to sweat every now and then. I mean, moving and exercising is also a way to cleanse yourself. Movement is good for the horses. Still, it's important how you do it. And I don't want to stand here and say that I know exactly how it's done and that I'm doing everything right. I don't always get it right either. And yet, we've figured it out, I think, how horses think. We're really trying to think like horses, not expecting them to think like us, but instead we're fully adapting to their way of thinking. And then it really has the potential to just bring the horses a lot of genuine enjoyment, real fun, and excitement. And that's not me anthropomorphizing or anything. That's genuinely just how it works. That's what I experience every single day.
I see that whenever I'm here.
And then, of course, it's also super important, what kind of horses are you actually working with, right? Because not all horses are Grand Prix horses. And that's absolutely fine. It's really just like a school for the highly talented here. We're focusing on a specific type of horse, one that brings that natural movement and energy. And I think that's completely fine. And still, to circle back around, this discussion is really important. And I always see the positive in everything. I always see the opportunity to make things better for the animals, to truly create a meaningful and lasting impact for them. So you don't have to be as extreme as me. I don't eat any meat. I'm actually vegan. Still, I do have a leather product sometimes, and we're actually talking about that again with the saddle. Yeah. The thing is, there's just not the perfect alternative everywhere yet, at least not for now, you know what I mean? For example, I now have vegan boots in my collection as well. What I'm trying to say is I come out on top in a discussion when it's factual and well-founded. I also manage to take something positive away from it every time.
Yeah, the journey is the goal. I mean, you mentioned it earlier. We've been at it for a year now. For me, when we first came here, some of the ways you guys approach things really stood out. You've also got a great way of presenting Aubenhausen. It's already done so professionally. And sometimes it's like when you've grown up in this industry and like you've rightly said, not everything runs smoothly, which is why the discussion is actually a good thing. And without having to say that competitive riding is nonsense and leisure riding is good, or even no riding at all is better. Ethically, it's quite a broad field. It's clear that many things can improve and definitely need to get better as we continue to move forward. And I think there's actually not much disagreement about that. The how is definitely the tipping point. But when you see a lot and drive through many stables, it really gives you a much clearer picture of things. And then you see how everyone communicates. And of course, on social media, everyone is optimizing their presence. And you think, okay, that can't possibly be right at all. And then when we were here for the first time or the first few times, and I saw, okay, you guys are really doing it this way, that personally inspired me a lot in a very positive way. That's already good. And at the same time, I've especially noticed with you how open you remain. Despite everything you've already accomplished, you keep pushing forward consistently. He got involved in our project saying, hey, come on, let's give it a try. Let's explore what an open system is, how it functions, and how we can, like you mentioned earlier, not just warming up when it's good, but what comes after good, better, really good, and perfect. I mean, there are a lot of people who say, I can ride or I can't ride, but there are only a few who win the Olympics or are world champions or European champions, something like that. That means between good and perfect, there are just an insane number of levels that you can actually reach. And I think we both love finding those things and being part of it. I think that's really exciting, and I'm fully on board with it. It's a perspective I completely stand behind and agree with. What I find really interesting is how it's always tied to the opportunities that are out there. Of course, some people from the outside might say, yeah, sure, with a place like Aubenhausen, you can pretty much do whatever you want. You don't really have that pressure. What I noticed very, very early on, in the conversations we had, especially about horses, that you really take the time to analyze the horses, how they are, what they're capable of, and if they're genuinely suited for it. And I'm really curious about that. We've tried a few different approaches now and also made efforts to help the horses or make things easier for them. Do you get the sense, or are you of the opinion that these more modern horses nowadays require more solid and better management because they move more, and there's a lot more to consider with equipment, saddles, and overall care? It's not just about the riding itself, but the whole package around it. Do you feel like that's becoming more important, like for you too, or was it always important and we just didn't see it, or how's it going to be?
Well, I think it's always been important, but every sport evolves over time. You know, it's just the way things go. We'll just keep doing it this way because that's how it's always been done. No need to change. That's not the right way. It's just not how we operate. I also think our sport has become way more athletic over time, to be honest. That's exactly why we developed DresserFit. It's all about sharing how we stay in shape and keep ourselves ready for the sport with everyone who's part of it. So if you want your horse to move like a rubber ball, you've got to become one yourself first so you can stay flexible and move with it. And that's why the development of the saddle is, of course, extremely important. But I wouldn't necessarily say it was any less crucial back in those earlier times either, to be honest. If anything, it's always been key. It was just as important back then. You just keep evolving, gaining new insights. And you're definitely someone who's super open-minded and always eager to keep improving and growing yourself. And of course, we naturally bring those kinds of people around us so we can grow, evolve, and keep moving forward together. You know way more about saddles than I do. And honestly, I don't even need to know every single detail about it, you know?
Yeah, but it sort of reflects each other, you know? That's what makes it all so much fun.
But I'm truly grateful to have the chance to work alongside such incredible people every day. And that's how we approach everything we do. And then we focus on giving our absolute best performance in the arena during those key few minutes we have together. But there's so much behind it, and it's all so carefully planned out way in advance. I mean, it simply doesn't work without that kind of preparation. It's perfect. Funny enough, I've actually got a pretty good story to tell about that whole perfect idea. I wasn't there in Tokyo for Jesse's first Olympics, but with COVID keeping us apart, we ended up talking on the phone every single day. And I always wanted to share this or that little piece of advice or encouragement with her and just be there for her in any way I could, like how she should do things. But instead, she kept telling me all the time how she was doing things and what she thought and what I thought about it, and I pretty much always just listened. There's one thing she always said that I'll never forget. It doesn't have to be perfect, just good enough. And I always kept saying, no, it doesn't have to be perfect. Oh, and in the end, it turned out perfectly because she just let it all go naturally. If you tell your horse it has to be perfect, or keep thinking that while riding, there's just way too much tension built up. So it's not that complicated either, but the saddle should definitely stay in proper balance, and it should fit the horse properly. That's what makes it perfect, because then everything falls into place. You feel your horse and it's easy. It should feel that way. It's natural, but of course there's always a but to keep in mind. What I'm trying to say is I'm not suggesting that's enough just on the surface, because we're really diving into the details here. And it's super important to
Kein
check
einfacher
everything thoroughly. But we
Ja,
also need to say, this fits now, it's good as it is, and we're on track.
For my part, I've got a bit of terminology to think about. Words, after all, hold a lot of power, exactly like how. You always really focus on making sure that, in the end, you somehow manage to pull out the positive side of every situation. That's exactly my nature. My surroundings, my private life, sort of make me a compulsive optimist. But I don't have any other choice. For me, there's just no other way around it. But I've got to keep going. When it comes to saddles and riding, that word perfection has actually been quite romantically swapped out for harmony, because a horse can trot perfectly or jump perfectly, and still, the overall picture with its rider just isn't harmonious. That's actually the big criticism in dressage, the transition between classical riding and, tension movements and such. A perfect trot stride or shoulder mechanics or whatever it may be can still be rooted in tension. I mean, it's like someone out there has defined what perfect should look like. No one set the rules for harmony. Harmony is more about feel. That's also why I'm not really a fan of using the word perfection. And especially in dressage, it's entirely in the eye of the beholder. That's what makes it a little tricky.
But there's definitely a big, clear difference, like whether the expression comes from being relaxed or if it's driven by tension and stress levels. I'd say tension isn't a bad thing if it's positive, like having a good, solid kind of body tension, the right kind of energy. And if it's tension-free, well, that's kind of like life. I usually carry an upright, positive kind of tension. But it's laid back, just flowing naturally from a place of ease and comfort. And this calm, relaxed trot through the body, that's true expression to me. The other thing is tension. That doesn't mean my horses are always entirely free of tension in every single millisecond of their ongoing movement. But when I notice that, like, oh, there's some tension here now, then I focus on helping them fully let go and relax properly.
Yeah, and that's, of course, where we circle back to our topic, something we've experienced a few times, where horses just show more tension or seem less natural in their movement with a certain saddle fit compared to when they're in a different one that feels way more comfortable for them overall. We've also experimented a bit, whether it's with wool or air cushions, and we've got one set up this way, the other that way. There are horses that make their own decisions, and I think that's really good, what we're doing together now. I've really learned, my background is more with correction horses, difficult ones, the kind that have genuinely decided where and how often to ditch their rider. I think it's really important to trust that feeling and to just make sure the horses can kind of choose their saddle or their situation themselves, giving them a bit of control over what feels right for them in the moment and respecting their comfort, to really tune into the horses, to look a bit more closely. And I think ultimately, as you describe it, it really comes down to what I want as a rider, It's about figuring that out. Do I just want a result? Like, does the horse have to nail all the moves in some specific way or another no matter what? Or am I really chasing that feel? Could you make that clear for yourself? It varies, Sometimes you're like, okay, when you're riding, are you chasing that feel or are you aiming for a result?
It is always the feeling. Well, of course, I want a result. If we're athletes, we aim for results, but I'm not focused on chasing a result when I'm on the horse. Instead, I'm really searching for that special, unique feeling. And now, of course, I've gained quite a bit of experience over time, so I know exactly how it should ideally feel in the moment. And for that, I often need the mirror, and I still need it from below. So I'm lucky with Jessie, of course, because she's a training partner I have all the time, someone who can be a mirror for me. But also with trainers, because, I can sometimes deceive myself, like that feeling can be deceiving at times. From below, it might not look so great at all.
Ja, genau, das habe ich jetzt.
But that's actually helped us quite a bit. You really need that in dressage especially. And what I also don't want with my students is for them to just blindly follow what I tell them without fully grasping or questioning the reasoning behind it all. If I say now he's got the pole in the right position, but he doesn't feel good, that just doesn't make sense or work together properly at all. So the feel, that's why I keep asking, how does it feel for you right now in this exact moment? Or when I say this is ideal, does it feel right? Does he pick up on that energy as you effortlessly glide into the pirouette, maintaining that precise connection in hand to move forward with confidence, accuracy, and seamless fluidity? So that feel is really the key. I've had those moments where I've thought, I'm riding exactly how that trainer told me to, but it's not always quite as straightforward as it seems. I've also had quite a lot of trainers in my life. and I did everything exactly the way they showed me, and that really wasn't good at all.
And that's actually a really interesting point. I mean, you're not just born like that. It's kind of a process, right? Do you have a defining horse? I hear that a lot. Like there's often that one horse that really sparked it all off. You get what I'm trying to say here? The one that transforms a rider who's just obediently following the trainer's instructions into the rider they eventually become. The one who figures out what they truly want, not just feel. Is there a defining horse for you?
There were quite a few. I can definitely pick out a couple that really stand out. There was Sam, not so well known anymore, but Der Hit, then Daily Mirror, Famoso, and now it's... Yeah, exactly. Now there are a couple of few new horses in the mix, which is exciting. But there's this key moment I can still vividly remember with Der Hit. I was at the German Championships, and I ended up in last place. That was my very first German Championship. And then I thought to myself, nah, this isn't it. But I followed every single instruction exactly as it was thoroughly explained to me. So then I told myself, okay, now I'm going to trust my gut. My gut feeling is always my best guide in these situations. By the way, you can actually practice trusting your gut in everyday situations. For example, a really simple one. When I see a car drive past and I notice two cars, do I prefer the color of this one more, or does the other one catch my eye better? It's something totally trivial. I would say I'm definitely very sensitive, almost overly so at times. So it's also a bit of a weakness for me, but it's also my biggest strength that I feel those little things so intensely. And because of that, I might notice things that you might not notice if you're hardened. So I give that inner instinct as much space as possible.
Yeah, that's also how I got to know you now in the riding world at home when we're working with horses and trying to figure things out together as a team. You know what I mean? So I can totally confirm that from the ground up. And in the end, it's the same with the saddles. You really look, and then sometimes someone from the outside asks, why did you put that one on there? It's a lot about that inner instinct, you know? You end up making decisions just like you said, I don't really want to. And sometimes I'm pretty straightforward, just saying, come on, let's go and do it right now. Let's do it. It hasn't always turned out badly, but I think it's really up to the person and their field. Some allow it, and it varies a lot. It's not really a bad thing either. Maybe you're not the top seller of some product, whether it's a horse, a saddle, or anything else, but on a whole different level, you might still end up doing really well.
By the way, I just want to say it again. This is honestly my own personal experience from working closely alongside you. The horses change over time, you know. That means, period. Just because I have a saddle that fits now, it doesn't guarantee it will always stay that way in the future. We've been noticing it quite a bit recently, even today once more with one particular horse. And I think that's especially valuable in our teamwork, that you always make the effort to come back really consistently. You support me in making sure the saddle kind of grows along with the horse. Yep. And that's so important. Because it's not just a one-time setup that stays fixed.
Yeah, it's actually crucial because you want progress, and everything surrounding it has to be able to support that development. It's just like any athlete working on their body and continuously refining their balance. And there are different muscles and preferences involved when you're starting to learn something as opposed to when you're aiming to refine it or make it look more elegant. And sometimes it's about strength early on. Component placement. It's building the horse's power to carry their rider. It's becoming a bigger issue because horses that move with such power naturally tend to have less overall strength. Increased movement ultimately results in less strength available for the rider to rely on. That affects us men because on average we weigh more. Of course, way more than, you know, light, awesome women like your sister. She's got it way easier. Still, we have the option to say, hey, let's try to solve this physically so that we can kind of level the playing field again. It is a sport, as you've said, where men and women are on equal footing, but of course we have different physical abilities. And for me, it's really, truly fascinating to observe and understand what you can learn about a horse through the service and care you provide for them on a daily basis, step by step. So health-wise, Strengths, weaknesses, you can also get it wrong sometimes. And every horse develops differently. That's why it's so important to have open systems that allow you to do a ton of different things. And you're genuinely surprised now by all the things we can handle, even in such quick and simple steps. But you also have to be willing to think differently overall, like saying, hey, that worked for a while as a young horse, but now you need to think differently because the horse has developed and it needs space in other areas now. That's, I think, Dot. What's very, very important, and something I also, even now with the people we're training, I really focus on heavily, always ensuring that the service aspect is key. That when a new saddle is put on the horse after 3 months, a lot has changed. That needs to be checked. And you should at least check in together every 6 months. Yeah, we see each other more now, but you've got a few more horses. But that's really crucial. The riders have to commit as well. For many, it's just seen as a simple tool. They want a saddle to feel comfortable, and then the horse simply has to perform. But I think that's not really a sustainable approach.
No, I mean, Dot, I think that's really important. And one more thing to add to that, because you mentioned stiffness, men and women, and men do tend to get stiffer than women. So there's definitely something you can do about that. Just a little self-promo here, Dresser Fit. I'm saying this with full conviction. It's functional training, and it genuinely works for what you really need. It's not just a complementary sport. It's very targeted. You're actively doing something. And of course, it's great for women too. It's just so good. I do it every single morning, and honestly, 10 to 15 minutes is all it takes. It's just like brushing your teeth. And then, you know, I really hope that in 10 or 15 years, I'll still be sitting smoothly on the horse. I still have to prove it, but yeah, it helps me a ton. And I'm not constantly thinking about it like now I'm at a disadvantage because I'm a guy and have to compete against the elegant women. So that's not in my head at all, but I'm really grateful for my body, that it's there for me. And when I've got the horse in balance and I'm in balance myself, then it's just pure ease. It feels like everything flows naturally and effortlessly. And the tricky part is always when you think, now I've got it, now I'm balanced, and then you lose it again. And it's the same in life. That's exactly why horses turn out to be such incredible and valuable life teachers. Yeah. So I always aim to naturally to stay in that perfect balance. And yet I keep losing it. And the more reflective and experienced you are, the more you notice it, and then you try to find that balance again. And yeah, it's a constant process for me, you know, always trying to stay on track.
Pretty philosophical.
Now we'll circle back to the saddle to wrap things up. Yeah. If the saddle isn't properly balanced at all, then it's genuinely quite tricky and problematic. As a rider, I have to compensate a lot. And it just makes such a big difference when it fits.
Yeah, and the horses are naturally different in their movement when they're paired with various riders. It's often like that. The trainer gets the saddle, and then all the students end up needing the exact same one for themselves too. That's a key topic, for instance, when it comes to men and women. Our unisex trees help counter that effectively, and it's working out pretty well. But a woman essentially needs to stabilize herself in the saddle to become a little more steady and firm overall. And a man really needs to loosen up a bit more. Like you've already mentioned in Dresser Fit, I'm following that with a lot of interest because it makes my job so much easier to manage and more effective. After work, they just hop on, ride now, go. Now I'm a rider. 23 hours a day, they're not riders, and for 1 hour a day, they are riders. Folks often mention horses staying in the stable or pasture 23 hours, then ridden just 1 day. The demands for sport, for ethics, for 100%, they want the best farrier, the best saddle, the best trainer, and that's what it's all about. That's always my little mantra that I like to repeat. Then they themselves are only at 20%, 30%. So what you're suggesting is definitely the right path. But the reality often is that people don't find the spaces to that extent, or maybe they're dealing with certain limitations or other unexpected challenges that come up along the way. And that's where this headline stays. A woman needs to stabilize herself a bit through her very soft, supple body and the different center of gravity that a woman has, compared to a man who just gets stiffer with age, who I need to put in some effort to keep a bit more loose. And these training stories, they're everywhere in sports. Equestrian sport is sport. But with the saddle, I also have ways to influence that. And there, for instance, it's really interesting, the massive hype we're seeing with these air cushions. So that's something we only did at the beginning when we had horses with kissing spines or mares that were a bit testy. They had roasted issues and similar problems. It was produced by an English manufacturer, but honestly, they weren't that well put together back in the day. The whole concept is absolutely brilliant, but honestly, you had to manage a lot technically, and unfortunately, there were moments when the service added some unnecessary stress too. And I always thought it was great for me as a man to realize, oh, we can sit down here, the horses aren't stressed. When I see my wife, she's much lighter, they've run, but I just sit. And we actually see that with a few horses. I think you notice, despite all the elasticity, smoothness, I mean, you're really sitting there. And no three people will tell you otherwise. You're really looking good on the horse, very smooth, and you're putting in a lot of effort there as well. And even you've mentioned to me that you notice a difference, that for the horses, with some of them, it's really like, wow, it's so much easier for them. I find it absolutely fascinating that you can help both from the athletic side and with the equipment as well.
Yeah, I find it really exciting. Sure, there were moments when it felt a bit too intense for me, but ultimately you've just got to give it a shot and see. But with a few horses, it's really a game changer. Like the way they move, it just feels so completely and totally different, almost like a whole new experience entirely.
Do I need to add a dressage hour on top?
Yeah, ideally, no. If it's comfortable, it should feel that way, and the swinging back should be natural and effortless. It's all about the flow. It feels really comfortable, so you can actually, if you're flying out of the saddle, then something's not right because maybe it's tension. So if it's always like really on red, so if it's moving, it's already harder. If it isn't, but you see a lot of people, I just have to throw this in. I've had people come to me and say, I want it to swing a lot, and then it swings, and then I need to have the old saddle again so they can sit properly. I don't know, but of course, it's just one of those things where you have to find the balance. You know, it's not always straightforward. For me, I'd say I can sit on any horse. It's bold. Well, I haven't yet.
You've really put in the work, but it looks much better now. You're absolutely right. Yeah.
He's actually thrown me right out of the saddle before.
Well, not thrown out of the saddle, but I've definitely thought about giving it a go at some point.
We found a solution now. Yeah, I mean, the solution isn't always right there. You just have to figure it out as you go. You just have to try things out, and it's the same with training horses. There's no single way. It's not about pushing our path. We tune in and feel it out. We sense, we try something out, then we tweak it, and that's when we gain an insight. And sometimes it can even happen by chance. So what you were saying earlier, like Dot, suddenly I get an idea.
Yeah. That's a good example. It's like this girth that you now have on many of the horses. It actually came about by chance when we wanted to measure a horse. That had a scar, and during the process we noticed we used some material similar to the kind you get impressions with from the dentist. You know, those bit impression things, it shifted underneath and left stripes exactly where those scars were, you see, on the gums. And we thought, okay, why does a girth move so much? But it's really part of a system. The rib cage consists of the spine above and the sternum below, creating a functional system. If something shifts at the top, the bottom has to follow suit. After that, we simply removed the stud guard plate. We snipped it off, ran the strap over it, and suddenly we got our imprint, and we're pretty pleased with the outcome. But the funniest part was when the rider said, yo, whatever you guys did there, make sure to get it patented. The vibe is awesome. That's how the girth came about, a total fluke, and now you've got a bunch of horses ready to go. So it's all about trial and error. Anyway, Benny, that was a super interesting chat. So I'm super happy that we got to be here, and I'm really looking forward to what's coming with so many interesting horses to see and experience. Can stay with you. You'll keep working with them, and new ones will join. We'll have a lot of fun together, I'm sure.
I'm really excited too, and thanks so much for your effort, your expertise, and your passion in everything you do. That's exactly what we need moving forward.
All right. Swing by from here, from beautiful Aubenhausen, and hopefully see you very soon.